Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our Planning Board meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Do we have any declarations of conflicts this evening? Seeing none, can I have an approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Okay, moved by Bobby, seconded by Councillor Beck. All those in favor? And we don't have anyone online, do we, Jason? Okay, so that's unanimous support for the agenda. Adoption of the minutes from January 16th. Moved by Bobby Kenny, second by Sin. All those in favor? Okay, thank you very much. Moving right along. Any business arising from the minutes? Okay, seeing none, we can move right on to reports. And our first one is variance. Unaddressed parcel adjacent to 300 Capitol Drive. And Sonia will present this to us. So over to you, Sonia.
Thank you and good afternoon, Madam Chair and respected members of the board. This is a request to approve the major variance for the unaddressed parcel, PID number 387407, adjacent to 300 Capitol Drive. The request is to increase the maximum permitted height in the C2 zone from 12 meters to an average maximum permitted height of 19.96 meters in order to allow for a 6-story hotel building on the subject property. The subject property is currently vacant and contains no building or structures. It is located on the south side of Capitol Drive and is found approximately 300 meters east of the Turning Circle intersection with Upton Road and Maypoint Road. The parcel is approximately 1.09 hectares or 2.7 acres in size with approximately 122 meters of frontage along Capitol Drive to the north. If we look at the surroundings, there are C2, which is highway commercial lands located at the northeast and west. There is an existing 6-story hotel, which is Hampton Inn and Suites to the west and a vacant land to the east. The land is bounded to the south by lands in the OS zone that contain a city-owned park space as well as 3 residential lots found within the R1L zone, whereas 2 lots of which are currently developed with single detached dwellings. This is a site plan of the proposed 6-story hotel. The site statistics show that the proposed structure meets all the technical requirements of zoning and development bylaw except the maximum permitted height. Ground floor plan, typical floor plan, and the front elevation. In accordance with Section 3.9.3 of the Zoning and Development Bylaw, written notice by ordinary mail explaining the purpose of the major variance was sent to 48 property owners within 100 meters of the subject property, soliciting their written comments for or against the proposal on January 17th, 2024. 1 letter of support and 1 letter of concern have been received. As of submission deadline of January 31st, 2024, an abutting resident and property owner to the south responded requesting that a fence be built along the property boundary between the proposed hotel and abutting residential properties to the south that front onto England Circle. The resident expressed concerns for privacy, noise, and security and requested that a solid fence of up to 8 feet in height be established. The owners of 2 of the residential lots that back onto the subject property from the south fronting onto England Circle responded that they are in full support of the request for major variance to permit the proposed hotel development. Here is a quick summary of the attributes. Some of the positive attributes are that the hotel with 120 suites along with supporting service amenities will provide additional local employment and economic opportunity. Additional density located within an established commercial area along an established bus route and main arterial road. The property is located in proximity to many complementary and supporting businesses, services, and amenities. The proposed height of the building would be equal to that of an existing hotel located adjacent to the site to the west. The building would be set back from the road at a greater distance than what the zoning requires, thereby limit impact of the increased height with respect to the streetscape. Some neutral attributes are that the property has sufficient parking available on the site to scale to the proposed use. The site is located adjacent to an existing city park, which would be a complementary amenity. A few shortcomings are that the building would be noticeably higher than the maximum allowable height in the C2 zone, exceeding the existing limit by 2 stories. A land use buffer will need to be maintained on an ongoing basis between the sensitive uses adjacent, which is the low-density neighborhood. The Planning and Heritage Department encourages that the Planning Board recommend to Council that the following major variance for the unaddressed parcel PID 387407 adjacent to 300 Capitol Drive to be approved to increase the maximum permitted height for a proposed hotel building in the C2 zone from 12 meters to 19.96 meters in order to allow for a 6-story hotel building on the subject property. Thank you, and I can take any questions.
Great, thank you, Sonia. Any questions? Go ahead. Oh, and I just want to point out that the applicant is here, so if you have any questions, the applicant is here to clarify anything as well. Okay, go ahead, Sin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sonia, could you please go back to the site plan and take a look at the entranceway?
This one?
Yeah, so the adjacent building, there is already a hotel there. Is it connected?
No.
They're not connected, right?
No.
It's like two
Not-
separate,
Yeah,
they are connected?
they are.
Okay, so I think, I have no issues with this one, that's connecting to Capitol Drive. But the building on the side, which is connected to the gas station, and there is a lot of vehicles that come out of the gas station that takes, and it's kind of not really designed properly. So I'm wondering, that might be for a lot of folks, they might take just the hotel entranceway to the gas station. So is there any proposal there to avoid such, unnecessary traffic?
I believe applicant would be able to clarify that.
There's a fair bit of history with respect to the development of this whole property.
Right.
And the objective is to, one, make everything safe and convenient, and to provide efficiency. The rear of the property has a drive aisle in it, which provides a secondary access and egress. So that is clear all the way out to Maypoint Road. You do not have to enter onto the gas station property. So there is a clear circulation route on the south side of the property that connects all 3 of the developments: the convenience store gas station, the Hampton Inn, and now this home to Hilton that's proposed. The access points onto Capitol Drive are restricted to right in, right out. So that provides for the reality that Capitol Drive has a high volume traffic, and we have agreed that, given permission to proceed with this project, there will be a median constructed in Capitol Drive, so that it's clear that you can only enter onto the hotel site directly from Capitol Drive or exit and make a right-hand turn. So, and this has been, I think, part of the overall development plan for this sequential development of the site.
Right, thank you so much.
Go ahead.
Not an earth-shattering question, Brian, but the resident from the abutting property expressed concerns about privacy and requested an 8-foot high fence. Is the developer, I'm sure, is comfortable with that request?
I think if you read the two letters, the first letter that has two lots that abut the property stated that we're not here talking about rezoning. The property has been C2 highway commercial, I think, since the city of Charlottetown incorporated West Royalty into the city, and there's no change of zoning. So the properties also that are residential, those three lots that are referred to that abut the property on the south, all have significant trees on them at the back of their property. So there are 25-foot high, very dense spruce trees already in existence on that private property that exists. DP Murphy has very high standards of landscaping for any of their properties. You can visit any of their quick-serve restaurants or their hotel properties, and they pride themselves on landscaping. And I think the preference is to continue with soft landscaping to complement the existing private trees that buffer the backyard. So I think we would consider it not necessary.
Anybody else have a? Are you fine with your explanation on the fence?
I can't imagine that it would be that onerous a task to accommodate the resident that is concerned. How long I know it's 8 foot that he's requesting, but what length is involved?
It's probably 80 feet,
80?
80, but there's 400 feet of rear property line on the back
Is
of
that,
the lot.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's not about cost, it's about aesthetics. That in this case, we feel that there's going to be a 5-foot landscape buffer on the hotel property. The building is then still going to be another 25, 30 feet away from the buffer.
Yeah.
So there's no real sort of adjacency to the backyard. The condition is an existing condition. It's C2 commercial land, and we're not changing the use.
Yeah.
We're-
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Jeff.
Anybody else have any questions? Well, if no one else has any questions, the Planning and Heritage Department has recommended that Planning Board recommend to council that the following major variance for the unaddressed parcel be approved. So do I have somebody that would like to, okay, moved by Councillor Beck and seconded by Paul Conley. So the resolution is on the floor. Any questions on the resolution? Seeing none, we can call the question then. All those in favor? Okay, anybody opposed? Okay, unanimous. Thank you. Okay. Okay, thank you for that. Our next item on the agenda is rezonings and site-specific, 199 Grafton Street slash 156 Prince Street. And David Gundam, our Manager of Development Planning, is here to present this application. And our applicant is also here for any clarification and questions as well. So over to you, David.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair, Deputy Mayor Yankoff. As the Chair mentioned, this is an application that regards 199 Grafton Street, 156 Prince Street. This is a request for public consultation. regarding a site-specific exemption to the zoning bylaw, as well as an official plan amendment request. The request would seek exemption from sections 30.2 and 30.3 of the zoning and development bylaw, as well as amendment to the official plan regarding section 4.2.3 in order to permit an 8-story, 158-unit apartment building which is located on the subject property, PID number 342790. The property is located in the 500 lot area of the downtown area of the city of Charlottetown. It is within the downtown mixed-use neighborhood zone and is designated as downtown mixed-use neighborhood in the city's official plan. The following slide is a concept site plan which details the coverage of the building on the property as proposed. Just noting for planning board that there is a 8-foot step back which is shown here that would apply to the 7th and 8th stories of the proposed building facing west towards Prince Street. Just for the board's information, as many of you may already be aware, this project previously went through Planning Board, Design Review Board, and City Council under a previous application for a 6-story building that was approved back in 2021. This slide and the following several slides illustrate the contrast between the existing approval for the 6-story building versus the 8-story proposal as shown on the right-hand side, which is inclusive of that 8-foot step back that would apply to the 7th and 8th stories shown here. So again, the 2021 approval on the left and the current proposal on the right. And again, another elevation view of the buildings. This is from the southwest facing northeast. And again, another view of the building before and after, comparing the previous approval and the existing proposal, and also illustrating the 7th and 8th story step backs up above. And the view, this is a view facing east towards Hillsborough Street. So tying in with this proposal was a report and subsequent recommendation that went to the Design Review Board last month in January. The design reviewer, Mr. Robert Haggis, who is a licensed architect, reviewed the proposal from a design perspective and provided recommendations that regarded mass and scale of the building, the roofs of the building, as well as the facades of the building. The Design Review Board and subsequently Council endorsed the recommendation by Mr. Haggis to include an 8-foot step back along the 7th and 8th stories of the building, which regards the recommendation pertaining to mass and scale, which the applicants are also in favor of. So again, to summarize the exemption request, under the zoning bylaw, this is an exemption to the existing height provisions of the bylaw. The previous approval in 2021 granted an overall maximum permitted building height of 70.4 feet or 21.45 meters. The current request up to 8 stories would bring the building up to a maximum height of approximately 88 feet or 26.82 meters. Therefore, the request before you to proceed to public consultation would be to request an increase by an additional 17.6 feet or 5.36 meters. This exemption pertains to section 30.3.2.c Part 3 of the Zoning and Development Bylaw, which requires that buildings require a 45-degree angular plane step back, whereas the compromising step back would achieve a 70-degree angular plane along the 7th and 8th stories. With respect to the official plan, the proposal is to seek amendment from section 4.2.3, which states the following with regard to the downtown mixed-use neighborhood designation, land use designation that applies to the subject property. Downtown mixed-use neighborhood areas are generally to provide a transition between the predominantly residential areas in the downtown neighborhood designation, which would be found to the west of the site, and the more intense and larger scale building, sorry, to the east of the site rather, and the more intense and larger scale buildings associated with the downtown Main Street and downtown core designations that would be found to the west of the site. Although uses in the downtown mixed-use neighborhood areas may be more transitional in nature, the prevailing residential character of the built form should remain intact. The official plan amendment is therefore to seek relief from these requirements, that buildings in the land use designation that applies to the site remain transitional in nature with respect to their immediate surroundings as it regards their built scale. And again, just to emphasize what the request is gearing towards, the star on the map indicates the location of the subject property. This is the official planned land use designation map. So as shown here, this is the location of the site, which is, this designation is intended to form a buffer between the downtown neighborhood area to the east and the Main Street designation and downtown core designations that are found to the west. So again, the area shown in light brown here is intended to form a buffer in terms of transition and built scale from what's more intense in the core here to the west and what's found further to the east in the surrounding downtown neighborhood areas. And just to emphasize again, these are the building elevation drawings that have been supplied by the applicant. These are the views that would face east and west from the site. And again, the 7th and 8th story step backs are shown right here along these elevation drawings. And these are the views that would face north-south, north towards Kent and south towards the adjoining street, which is Grafton Street. So north on the top and south on the bottom. So to conclude, planning staff recommend the following: that the Planning and Heritage Department encourages planning board to recommend to council that the request for a site-specific exemption to section 30.2, regulations for permitted uses, and section 30.3 bonus site development standards in the downtown mixed-use neighborhood zone of the Zoning and Development Bylaw, and the accompanying request for amendment to the City of Charlottetown official plan with respect to section 4.2.3, proceed to public consultation for the proposed 8-story, 158-unit building that would include 32 affordable housing units having parking located within and under the building, proposed for 199 Grafton Street, 156 Prince Street, PID number 342790. So that's a summary of the development proposal and the request tonight for Planning Board to consider for public consultation. Thank you.
Thank you for that, David. Any questions from the board? Okay. Oh, yes. Go ahead, Councillor Beck.
Yeah. Thank you for that, David. I think I'd like to thank you in particular for the renderings with the what the 7th and 8th floor looks like, because we didn't have that last time when we were talking about it, and I like it. I think it's a nice. I think it's a good look. It's a good. I think it's a good accommodation in terms of what we were trying to accomplish there. So that was good to have. And anyway, I'll move that it goes on to council. If you're looking for a mover,
Okay.
I'll put it on.
So we have a motion on the floor from Councillor Beck to accept staff's recommendation to move this on to council for recommendation to move on to public consultation. Do I have somebody to second that?
I'll second.
Okay, seconded by Lee McDonald. So resolution's on the floor. Any questions on the resolution? Seeing none, all those in favor? Yay, okay. Anybody opposed? Great, okay, so that will move on to council for council's decision on public consultation. Thanks to the applicant for coming in. Thank you. Yep. Okay, moving on to the next agenda item. We are moving to Hillsborough Park Community Concept. And this will be presented again by our Manager of Development Planning, David Gundam. Over to you, David.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. So again, to reiterate from what the chair mentioned, this is a request to proceed to public consultation regarding a combined zoning bylaw amendment and official plan amendment request for what we'll call the Hillsborough Park development concept. So the subject property, or and again, I'll go over what the details of the request entail. So the public consultation would consider the following amendments to both the zoning and development bylaw as well as the official plan. So starting from the top with the OP, it would be to amend Appendix A, future land use map of the official plan, from the existing institutional, medium-density residential, and low-density residential land use designations, and migrating those designations into the comprehensive planning area designation of the official plan. As well, dovetailing with this would be to amend the zoning map of the zoning and development bylaw from the existing low-density residential single zone R2S, institutional zone I, and medium-density mixed-use residential MUR, placing the portions of the property to which those zones apply into the comprehensive development area zone or CDA zone. And then subsequent to that, this is just kind of part and parcel with that request, would be requirement to amend Appendix B, comprehensive development area CDA parcels and permitted uses of the zoning and development bylaw, as well as amending Appendix I, which is the bylaw revision history of the zoning and development bylaw. So the subject property in this case is located northeast of and adjacent to the established Hillsborough Park neighborhood, which is within the Falconwood ward of the city of Charlottetown. The site is approximately 34.4 hectares or 85 acres in size. The existing neighborhoods that abut the subject property to the south and west are primarily composed of single detached dwellings, which are found within either the single detached residential R1S zone or the low density residential R2 zone. To the north and the east of the subject property is what's locally known as Wrights Creek, which is a tributary of the Hillsborough River. It flows towards the east and southeast, which forms a natural buffer for the lands from other existing development, which is found to the north. A mature treat area also exists along this perimeter of the site, which you can pick up on the aerial image on the screen before you. And this treat area is proposed to be maintained through any future development. There is a 100-meter buffer area that applies through this stretch with respect to the watercourse. So the lands on the site are currently vacant and undeveloped. They contain open field areas that have otherwise historically been used for agricultural crop production in the past. So the next slide, this is an overview of the intended purpose of the amendments, which is to facilitate future development of a master plan community on the subject properties, which would include a total range of between 1,211 dwelling units up to a maximum of 1,476 dwelling units, comprised of a mix of single detached, duplex, townhome, and multi-unit residential dwellings in the form of low-rise apartment buildings. The development is generally proposed to proceed in 3 phases, migrating from west to east. And as you'll see on the image before you, the lower density residential uses shown to the south, to the west, and these are low density townhouse blocks. The idea is that the applicants have put forward is to essentially step back the density, going from less intense to more intense as you go towards the inner portions of the site, and that's intended to provide a migration and sort of a greater degree of compatibility between the proposed development on the site and what surrounds it currently. And again, this is a site concept plan showing the layout of the proposed uses. Again, these could be subject to change in future, but this is the proposal and layout as put forward by the applicants at the present time. The road network proposal, the site has existing street frontage and road access onto Westcombe Crescent, which is found to the west here. There is a road stub currently present in and about this area that the site could have future access to. Also, there is the intersection of Hunter Lane and Northridge Parkway, which is approximately here. There's another opportunity for future road connection into the subject properties to facilitate road access for the development. The development concept proposes to utilize these two existing street frontages as the future access points into and out of the development, as well as proposing to create two new road accesses shown here towards the east that would link up with Acadian Drive, which is an existing road allowance shown in blue here. In support of the submission to the city, the applicants have provided a professional traffic impact study as well as an accompanying municipal servicing plan. The traffic impact study, or TIS, concluded that based on full build-out at the lower number of 1,211 dwelling units, that this build-out would generate an average total of 6,550 new vehicle trips to and from the development. The traffic impact study evaluated a baseline year of 2023 traffic conditions against future conditions in the year 2034, using growth to background traffic based on existing conditions, as well as a comparison of future conditions in 2034 based on full development. And the TIS evaluated these traffic impacts across 9 intersections. The following table on the slide before you summarizes the analysis of the traffic impact study with respect to those intersections to determine whether any future road upgrades would be required along these portions of the supporting road network to both support and accommodate the proposed future development at full build-out. Based on the findings of the traffic impact study, it has been concluded that the existing road networks that surround the subject property would be able to support the proposed development at full build-out, albeit at the lower figure of 1,211 dwelling units, with a limited scope of physical upgrades required. City Public Works has reviewed the TIS and provided comments with respect to the proposal that are contained within our report. Moving on to municipal servicing for water, wastewater, and stormwater. The accompanying municipal servicing plan has detailed proposed servicing layouts to address these 3 critical pieces of infrastructure to support the envisioned development. As part of this plan with respect to sanitary services, which is shown on the next slide here, the proposal would be to include 2 new pumping stations shown to the west of the site here and to the east of the site here to allow for proper future flow for sanitary servicing that would feed into existing 200 millimeter sanitary mains which are found abutting the site to the west and to the south. And again, just to go over again, there was a water servicing plan provided, which our water utilities have provided comment on, that's provided in our report. As well, they commented on the sanitary servicing plan as well as the proposed stormwater, which includes proposal for stormwater retention ponds on site found to the northwest and northeast of the site. So with respect to the official plan, the application proposes to consolidate various existing land use designations into a single designation, being the comprehensive planning area designation, to facilitate the future development. The following 3 sections of the OP, which were highlighted in our report, are really the key points in the OP that pertain to the proposal. The first being section 3.1, which speaks to containing urban sprawl by staging new development with the concurrency for provision of underground services. Section 3.2, sustaining Charlottetown's neighborhoods, mentions allowance for moderately higher densities versus traditional greenfield sites, which this would be defined as, to create new development that is harmonious with, that should say, existing development. And section 3.3 of the OP, housing needs and variety, speaks to encouraging development in fully serviced areas of the city, and it has been noted that the subject property has direct access to full municipal services, which are in proximity and already service established neighborhoods. Dovetailing with this too, there is a secondary plan that applies to this site, which is the East Royalty Master Plan. The East Royalty Master Plan identifies the subject properties as the site for future low-density residential, medium-density residential, as well as institutional use. Specifically, the secondary plan speaks to a future school site being located on the subject lands. The intent of the secondary plan is to provide a long-term vision for the area to ensure that there is well-planned contiguous development that is considered in a broad fashion and not on a piecemeal or ad hoc basis. The applicants are not proposing, I'll note, an institutional designation as part of the request, nor has a future school site been explicitly identified as part of the proposal at the current point in time. And on that note, planning staff do welcome feedback from council and the residents in future to gauge this aspect, as in our opinion, it does represent a fundamental shift from an important feature that's spoken to in the secondary plan, which was adopted in 2015 by council and is otherwise proposed by that secondary plan to provide an important community asset for the residents of the East Royalty neighborhood area. With respect to the zoning bylaw, section 44.1 for the CDA zone, which is the zone that the site is proposed to be migrated into, development within a CDA zone shall be subject to approval by council, and which includes a future development concept plan and a future development agreement, which would be signed between the owners and the city. Working site plans and buildings shall be approved by council on the recommendation of planning board for each phase of development within a CDA zone. So on that note, should the proposal be approved by council in the future, there would be a need to circle back to both planning board and council to approve the concept plan, the development agreement along each phase of the proposed development. The future site plan and proposed building locations would have to comply with the future requirements of the site-specific CDA zone. And given the nature of the CDA zone, it's intended to achieve, planning staff are of the opinion that this is the appropriate zone to pursue, and the associated requirements of the CDA provide the most appropriate mechanism and pathway by which to pursue the envisioned development under the zoning bylaw. So in conclusion, I'll state that the existing site and the proposal represent a rare and unique opportunity for new greenfield development on a large site within the city of Charlottetown that is surrounded by existing developed neighborhoods and has immediate access to existing municipal services, i.e. sewer, water, stormwater, and road networks. The proposal is both timely and some may say perhaps necessary to provide long-term predictable phased development that will contribute greatly to Charlottetown's broader housing shortage in the years ahead. And therefore, planning staff are of the opinion that the applicants, in this case, based on what they provided us, have provided sufficient information and details regarding the proposed development on the subject lands, that the proposal should now proceed to public consultation to gauge the thoughts, opinions, feedback, and direction of both council and the residents of Charlottetown. So again, just to echo from our report, the recommendation before you tonight is the Planning and Heritage Department encourages that the Planning Board recommend to Council to proceed to public consultation to consider the zoning bylaw amendment and official plan amendment requests that pertain to the unaddressed properties, being PID numbers 192252 and PID 422642, which propose future development of a master plan community on the subject properties that would include a total range of between 1,211 and 1,476 dwelling units, which include a mix of single detached, duplex, townhome, and multi-unit residential dwellings. And my apologies for the long-winded presentation, but I'll end on that note and turn it back over to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Does anybody have any questions? Go ahead, Councillor Beck.
Yep. Thank you for that, David. It wasn't long-winded at all. It was very thorough, actually, so thanks. Thanks for that. Dave, I just have one question on page 42, and it's about that future school site under the East Royalty Master Plan. And I know this is a little premature, but it was brought up on another development that we had discussed in a previous planning meeting about another development in that general area of Charlottetown. Is this the same in that they referenced a future school site as part of concerns, it was raised as concerns about the burgeoning population at LM Montgomery School, and it was brought up that there was a potential of another school site. Is this the same site that was being referenced in that other development? Is this the one here, or are there two different sites?
Through
Or
the
do you
chair,
know?
through the chair, Councillor Beck, I'm assuming that, and I recall that was for the Montgomery Heights rezoning request. I'm assuming that they were making reference during that meeting to the same site that I'm making reference to. That there's known provision since 2015 that there should be a new school site within the subject lands that were part of my presentation tonight. So I believe that is the school site that they're referring to because it's in proximity to the existing catchment area for the LM Montgomery School. Yeah.
So should this, if, again, it's down the road, but should this go ahead, the future school site would be taken off the table and it would be replaced with the development that's been presented here today?
Yeah, through the chair, Councillor Beck, based on what's before us right now, the concept plan, of course, it could be subject to change. The CDA zone is a bit of a sandbox zone. It's kind of a choose your own adventure, make it what you want. But based on the concept plan that's been put forth, there is no school shown on that concept plan, so it would be a deviation from what the secondary plan is otherwise requiring and directing for. So again, we've noted it as a concern. We'll see how that plays out as we move forward. But currently, the developers haven't proposed putting a school in any phase of the development that they've put forward at this time. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, David. Anybody else have any questions? I know tonight we're just, staff is recommending that we move this on to council for council's endorsement to move it on to a public consultation. So this will be coming back to us again. Should there be further questions that will come out of the council's decision or public consultation. But I still will turn it back over to the floor again if anyone else has any other comments or questions for myself or for David. And if not, then I will ask for a resolution to accept staff's recommendation to move this on to council for council to move this on to potentially public consultation. So, okay, moved by Sin. Seconder, okay, moved by Paul. So the resolution is on the floor. Any questions on the resolution? If not, we can call the question. Okay, all those in favor? Great. Anybody opposed? Okay, wonderful. Unanimous. Okay, moving on to our next agenda item, 503 University Avenue. And again, this is our Manager of Development Planning. David, over to you again.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll try not to wear out my welcome here. So the next application it's a bit similar to the last. It is a request for public consultation regarding a zoning bylaw amendment, combined zoning bylaw amendment and official plan amendment request that regard 503 University Avenue. Again, request to proceed to public consultation. Subject property is PID number 374140. Just running through the request in its totality is to amend Appendix A, future land use map of the official plan from the current institutional land use designation to comprehensive planning area designation. Amend Appendix G, which is the zoning map of the zoning and development bylaw from the current institutional zone, placing the property in the comprehensive development area zone, CDA. And then dovetailing with that would be requirements to amend Appendix B, comprehensive development area CDA parcels and permitted uses of the zoning and development bylaw, as well as amending Appendix I, which is the bylaw revision history for the zoning and development bylaw. So the request is to proceed to public consultation, and it would be to facilitate, if successful, the amendments would be to facilitate future development of a proposed 8-story apartment building that steps back to 6 stories and also eventually to 2 stories to the west. 257 units, which are intended, based on the applicant's submission, to be rental units only at this point in time. The subject property is located on the west side of University Avenue, shown here, and is an interior lot which is within the institutional zone as previously noted. The property is also designated institutional in the city's official plan. It's located approximately 350 meters north of the intersection of University Avenue and Belvedere Avenue, and has approximately 1.38 hectares or 3.42 acres of lot area, as well as 88 meters or approximately 289 feet of frontage along University Avenue. And as I'm sure the board is aware, this site is directly across the road from the University of Prince Edward Island, which is on the opposite east side of University Avenue. To the north side of the subject property is an existing multi-unit residential development, which is shown here. These are existing townhouses, row houses to the north of the site, which are within the medium-density residential zone R3. While to the west of the site, as well as to the south of the site, are lower density single detached residential uses, which are found within the R2 zone. And again, the property, I'll note, was, I didn't mention this before, but the former site of the Maritime Christian College, which is still shown on the image here. I'll note for planning board, the college has closed, and demolition permit was actually received by the city within the last 2 weeks to remove the existing buildings and structures from the site that were associated with the former college in anticipation and preparation for the proposed redevelopment of the site. So I'll just switch to, These are elevation drawings that were provided by the applicants to illustrate the building, the massing and scale of the building. This first slide is the west elevation, which faces to the rear towards Queen Street. And I did mention previously that it would be 8 stories, stepping back to 6, eventually stepping back to 2. And the 2 stories are only located along this west-facing facade that would face towards Queen Street, and that's the residential neighborhood found to the west of the site. So the next elevation, was what would be facing north towards the row houses, the townhouses, which are pre-existing, which are in the R3 zone to the north. And again, you can see the step back that the developers propose, going from 8 down to 6, and then down to 2, which is where one of the main entrances would be located. Sorry, I'm hopping around here. I skipped over these two. This is the main building elevation facing facing east towards University Avenue. So this is what you generally would see, most traffic passing by the site would see in the future based on the proposal. And this is what would be facing south again towards the lower density residential neighborhood that's in the R2. And again, you can see the step back similar to what you see on the north facing elevation drawing, which is also shown here. Similar to the last application, in support of the submission to the city, the applicants provided a traffic impact study to analyze local traffic in the area to determine potential impacts from the proposed development. The study found that following build-out of the 257-unit apartment building, that it would generate an average total of 1,226 new vehicle trips to and from the site that would be distributed along the local road network as shown here. So these are percentage breakdowns of the impacts from the site along the immediate road network as well as the nearest intersections. So these are proposed distributions of the traffic from the site. These aren't percentage increases in impacts. They're really just out of the 100% generated from the site, this is where does it go? So if you think of the roads as pipes carrying water, instead they're roads carrying cars, this is where the flow would go across the local road network. So based on the distribution model that the TIS concluded, the applicants assume that 65% of the traffic would occur onto University Avenue, with the remaining 35% flowing out onto Queen Street to the west. And as noted, I'll show you on another drawing, there's a proposed new road connection that would link into Queen Street to the west. The traffic impact study evaluated a baseline year of 2023 to future conditions in 2033 using background traffic data provided by the City of Charlottetown. And it evaluated impacts across 4 different local intersections in proximity to the site. The traffic impact study suggested that there may be potential upgrades required at 2 of those 4 local intersections following full build-out of the site. And also the study concluded that it's been demonstrated that the existing road networks that surround the subject property have the ability to support the proposed development at full build-out without significant changes to the local road network. I'll note for the board's information that City Public Works has reviewed the traffic impact study and did provide comments which are contained in our report. And again, this slide illustrates that proposed new road connection, which would actually cross city-owned lands which are found to the west or the rear of the site. So as part of the proposal, there would be two accesses onto University Avenue shown here, and then an access out onto Queen Street to the west of the site. Public Works staff have acknowledged and responded to this request, and in their comments they noted that the increased traffic generated onto Queen Street over here may result in the need for traffic calming measures to be implemented, but Public Works did not, at this point in time, recommend against or in opposition to this proposed connection at the current point in time. So moving on to official plan consistency, the application again proposes to migrate from the existing institutional land use designation to the comprehensive planning area designation to facilitate the proposed development. Again, there, in terms of the OP, there are 3 sections of the OP that have the most pertinent bearing on this application. First section is 3.1, which states that the promotion of compact form, infill development, and efficient use of infrastructure and public service facilities it should be encouraged within the City of Charlottetown. Section 3.2 states that preserving built form and density of existing neighborhoods to ensure that new development is harmonious with its surroundings. And Section 3.3 of the OP states that development should be encouraged in fully serviced areas of the city, and it's noted that the subject property has direct access to full municipal services being water, wastewater, stormwater, and existing road networks, which are in proximity to established neighborhoods. As far as the zoning bylaw is concerned, Section 44.1, permitted uses for the CDA zone. Development within a CDA zone shall be subject to approval by council of a future development concept plan and a related development agreement. Working site plans and buildings shall be approved by council in future on the recommendation of planning board for each phase of development within a CDA zone. Again, this development is only proposed to be developed as a single phase, but again, similar to the last application, it would necessitate council, planning board, and council reviewing and considering approval of a development concept plan and a development agreement entered into with the city and the owners of the subject property. Future site plan and proposed building locations would have to comply with the future requirements of the site-specific CDA zone. And at this point, planning staff are of the opinion that given the comprehensive nature of the proposed development as a very unique infill residential project, that the CDA zone and its associated requirements are in fact the most appropriate mechanism under the zoning bylaw and the pathway by which to pursue the envisioned development. So to conclude, I'll state that the proposal represents a unique opportunity for the repurposing of an existing underutilized institutional site with new infill multi-unit residential development along a main thoroughfare or roadway within the city. The proposal for the development is to establish a for-rent multi-unit apartment building that would be located directly across from the UPEI campus. And this could provide synergies and support the local housing market, and particular as far as the student population is concerned, which would increase housing supply at this location and could serve to relieve housing pressure within the rental market on other parts of the city. Planning staff are therefore of the opinion that the applicants have provided sufficient information and details concerning the proposed development of the subject lands at this point in time, and that the proposal should proceed to public consultation to gauge the thoughts, opinions, feedback, and direction of both council and members of the public, residents of Charlottetown. So to conclude, our recommendation is that the Planning and Heritage Department encourages that the Planning Board recommend to Council to proceed to public consultation to consider the combined zoning bylaw amendment and official plan amendment requests that pertain to 503 University Avenue, being PID number 374140, in order to allow for the future development of a proposed 8-story, stepping back to 6-story, 257-unit residential apartment building on the subject property. And that's my last remarks concerning the presentation, and I'll hand it back over to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I'll open it up to the floor. Is the applicant here this evening, David?
I don't believe they're in attendance this evening. They were aware of our report.
Okay.
We gave them foreknowledge of the
Sure.
meeting tonight, but I don't believe that they're in attendance
Okay.
in the room, so.
Yep. All right, so I think Paul Conley has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, David, for the presentation. I noted on page 3 that it talks about a connector road going west to hook up eventually with Queen. And it talks about crossing existing city-owned land. Is the city being compensated in any fashion?
Through the chair, Member Connolly, that would have to be negotiated in future. The lands, I'd be of the opinion, and I might be wrong, but I'd be of the opinion that those lands would remain under city ownership, but that's not to say necessarily that they would. That would be a negotiation between the developers and the city, more specifically our Public Works Department, whether they would rather maintain ownership custody and that would form part of a city right-of-way, or if they prefer to see that turned over to the developers as a private laneway that forms part of the development. Currently, it's a city-owned parcel. If it were developed tomorrow, it would have to be developed to city standards, given that reality. Again, this is maybe an issue that is outstanding at this point that has to be worked out in negotiation. We're not quite at that point yet, whether the lands would be overturned to the developers or it would be the city would maintain custody and build the road ourselves to the standard. And again, there would be, I imagine if that were to happen, there would be compensation to the city to cover those costs, but that would have to be negotiated. I don't have a firm answer on that, unfortunately.
Thank you, yeah. I just think it would be worthy of note that the city, in one fashion or another, should be compensated, but it could be noted by the board. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, so we have Councillor Beck has put a resolution on the floor to accept staff's recommendation to move this on to council for council's approval for public consultation. Yep. Yep, so moved by Councillor Beck. Do I have somebody to second it? Seconded by Councillor McCabe. So the resolution is on the floor. Any questions on the resolution? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, unanimous. Thank you for that. Okay, next on the agenda, we have 421 St. Peter's Road. Again, over to you, David, our Manager of Development Planning.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. So through the chair, this is a request for a site-specific exemption to the zoning and development bylaw that regards the existing R2 zone that applies to property at 421 St. Peter's Road. This is an application that the board did see previously for a request to proceed to public consultation. A subject property is identified as PID number 464586. It is regarding a proposed drive-through expansion for an existing coffee shop, which is located to the west of the southwest of the subject property shown here. Again, the request is to allow site-specific exemption within the existing R2 zone for the property to permit the expansion of the existing drive-through across this parcel that links into the parcel abutting to the southwest to expand an existing single-lane drive-through to a double-lane drive-through. The proposed double-lane drive-through would have, again, 2 order lanes with 14 vehicle queuing spaces. It would utilize the 3 road access points shown here. And I'll note for board's information, this may have been said before at a previous meeting and at the public meeting, but the dedicated access for the drive-through shown here would be a right-in only. It'd be a single lane right-in only to the easternmost extent of the site. So existing conditions, current land use context. The current land use is zoned for residential use. In the R2 zone, the main site adjacent to the parcel contains an existing gas station with accessory convenience store use, which includes a restaurant, Mr. Sub, PEI liquor store outlet, a coffee shop, which is a country-style donuts with the existing single-lane drive-through. The site is surrounded by low-density residential uses, being predominantly within the R1L and R2 zone containing single-detached and semi-detached units. Subject property has frontage onto a main arterial roadway, which is St. Peter's Road, being Provincial Route 2, which is under the jurisdiction of the Provincial Department of Transportation and Infrastructure. Section 46.8 of the Zoning and Development Bylaw contains regulations that regard queuing spaces and states that all queuing spaces shall have a minimum dimension of 6.5 by 3 meters or 21.3 feet long by 9.8 feet wide. Queuing lanes shall provide sufficient space for turning and maneuvering and shall not occupy any portion of a designated fire lane. In support of the application, there was a professional traffic study that was conducted by Harborside Engineering, which looked at 4 other sites containing similar drive-through arrangements, 2 in Charlottetown, 1 in Montague, 1 in Dartmouth. One of these sites did utilize a 2-lane order system, the other 3 single-lane order system, and the study observed peak periods of customer demand through the morning time periods of 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. across the 4 sites. The study concluded that the maximum queue observed at any given site at any given time was 6 vehicles in length. Linking this with the proposal before you, the traffic study found that the proposed 14 vehicle long queuing area proposed at the site would provide sufficient space to accommodate expected customer demand. As in regard to our legislative requirements, as we previously conducted a public meeting concerning the application, as per section 3.10.4 of the Zoning and Development Bylaw, on January 2nd, City Council approved the request to proceed to public consultation. January 9th, 2024, written notification was sent to all property owners within 100 meters, 328 feet of the boundaries of the subject property. A total of 35 letters were sent to residents to advise them of the public meeting, to request their response and comments. 1 written response was received from a concerned resident. And at the meeting, I'll note that there were 2 residents that spoke to the application. In terms of comments received from city departments, public agencies, City Public Works expressed that they were in support of the proposal with no further concerns. City Fire Department expressed concern for traffic accessing the site from St. Peter's Road, However, they are in favor of design concept number 2, which is the design concept that's been put forth, which the site plan that I previously had up on the screen illustrated. And Provincial Department of Transportation and Infrastructure expressed that the main drive-through entrance from St. Peter's Road must be maintained as single lane right-in only, which is reflected on the site plan, and that they are accepting of the 3 access points onto the site from St. Peter's Road as reflected in the current design. So the feedback from the public meeting, which was held January 23rd, 2024, local residents came forward and expressed concern on the following points with regard to the proposal. Concerns were with respect to site access, potential for traffic impacts, as well as impacts to the quiet and peaceful enjoyment of private property in vicinity to the site. In response to these concerns, site access, existing site access will be enhanced to incorporate a dedicated right-in only access for the expanded drive-through so that flow onto the site is partitioned among the drive-through and the other related principal uses, i.e. the gas station. With regard to traffic impacts, the traffic consultant's report concluded from comparable site data, observed site data, that there is an anticipation that there will be no backups onto St. Peter's Road during peak traffic periods, and that there would be little to no additional flow into the neighborhood, which is located to the north and accessed along Angus Drive from the site and the proposed expansion. With respect to concerns that residents expressed regarding impacts to the quiet and peaceful and enjoyment of property, the developers will be required to install screening and buffering between the expanded drive-through and abutting properties as per the requirements of the zoning and development bylaw. The intention by the developers, the applicants at this point, is to install a board fence along the east and the north boundaries of the site. This requirement would be incorporated as part of a future development agreement between the city and the developers. So to conclude, our staff recommendation to the board is that Planning and Heritage Department encourages that Planning Board recommend to Council to approve the request to allow for a site-specific exemption in the low-density residential zone R2 as it pertains to property located at 421 St. Peter's Road, being PID number 464586, to permit a double-lane drive-through to be built with respect to an established coffee shop which is located on an abutting parcel in the Highway Commercial C2 zone, being PID number 192187. So that is a summary of the request and the recommendation to the board, and I'll turn it back over to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Any questions? I mean, I know we've seen this application before. It's gone to public consultation. It's back here now for a recommendation to move on to council. But does anyone else have any questions? Go ahead, Councillor McCabe.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. And it's not, so just a clarification, because that was my question, and then you kind of explained that part of the development agreement will be that there will be some sort of buffering for that. And I think the applicant was willing to, he was really clear to say he would work with the property owners to ensure that their privacy was respected. But that will be part of something written clearly for those people.
Through the chair, Councillor McCabe, that's correct. The zoning bylaw does require that there be buffering. It doesn't point precisely that it has to be a board fence necessarily. It throws out options, but in talking with the developers, they're amenable to that, and the development agreement would lock that in and dial that in, that they're compelled to do it that way, notwithstanding that the zoning bylaw is a little open-ended in respect to how it approaches that aspect, I guess, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Go ahead, Bobby.
Thank you, Chair. Just looking at St. Peter's Highway there, it's 2 lanes coming into Charlottetown. There's no right turning lane though, right? Like if anybody's on the highway on the inside lane and they want to turn into the coffee shop lineup, then they'll have to slow right down to make that turn?
Yeah, Jason, could you call up the presentation again? It'll help illustrate an answer. I think I'll just flip to the site plan. Yeah, thanks, Jason. So, Bobby, you're correct. So there's St. Peter's Road. It's a partitioned highway, I like to call it, a divided highway, 4 lanes, 2 lanes either side, going in and out of town. There wouldn't be like a shoulder here or like I guess like you're saying, a turning lane on approach. It would be, there is a shoulder in this vicinity, but someone on approach would have to be in the right-hand lane to make that right turn in. If you're in the left-hand lane, you should probably get over before you make that approach.
I guess my point is, I'm concerned that you get a number of cars slowing down, it could impact the traffic on St. Peter's Road.
Yeah, I mean, through the chair, that's entirely possible. Again, we defer to the expertise of DTI, and they provided an opinion that they were happy with the layout as proposed. It is their corridor. If there's issues that emerge down the road, perhaps they could make some alterations within their right-of-way to adjust for that. But I understand where you're coming from, but again, we've deferred to their expertise and they're comfortable with what's shown on the screen. So,
Okay, thank you.
yeah, you're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay, yes, then.
Dave, thanks, Chair. David, what's the speed limit in that road?
It's 60.
Through the chair, Sen, I was going to say 50, but
They drive 90, but it's 50 maybe.
Thing is, like, with the roundabout close, it's 30, closed roundabout. And
Yeah.
before that, you really have to slow down
Yeah.
and in order to kind of take
Yeah.
a right turn to get into the entranceway. Often what happens is that when the vehicles are moving at a speed, and suddenly there is a risk of collision as well, and suddenly somebody's turning right. And I know the Department of Transportation has expertise on this, but it would be good to have some precautionary measures around that, just a caution that, there is a, turning entranceway or something, I know that might help vehicles moving to slow down. Anyway, they would have to slow down close to the roundabout, but it's not very far away from the roundabout. So.
if I may, through the chair, Sen, it is an important part to bring up. That entrance is, I would say, within 200 meters of that roundabout on approach, and when you're within that 200-meter distance, generally people would be slowing down on approach either if they're turning into the site or they're approaching to go through the roundabout to wherever they're going to. So it is something we can note for DTI to keep an eye on. I'm sure they're well aware that there's a change here that's happening with respect to the site, so I'm sure they'll have eyes on it and they'll react appropriately over time as they need to. So again, unfortunately we don't have jurisdiction in that corridor. It's their corridor, so we have to defer to their control here. So.
Just piggybacking on that. So if, again, predicting human behavior and stuff, I get their data and their stats, but if there was ever an issue, because that would be the third access point along the corridor of the highway there. There's also the entrance off Angus Drive where cars would come in. They could reevaluate and rejig that to still allow for cars to get in and whatever more safely if they felt at some point that their data wasn't correct.
Through the chair, Councillor McCabe, that's entirely correct. So over time, if there's more incidents that happen, DTI will have that data. And again, it's their corridor. They control where the access points are, and they do have ability to close an access if they foresee it's created a problem. So again, I'm sure they'll monitor this over time. If a problem is created, then they would react accordingly. And I don't want to speak for them, but they do have that ability to both give accesses and also take them away as well if there is a significant problem. So,
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Sid.
Thanks, Chair. David, is it possible to, I know we don't have jurisdiction on that, but is it possible to request, or ask for a signage within the property that says, it's drive-through, and in a way it is visible from a distance that there is a drive-through coming in about close to the roundabout?
through the chair, Sen, we can certainly make that request to DTI and just see where that goes. I mean, worst case, it never hurts to ask, so we can certainly note that and put that request forward and see what they say. We haven't at this point, but given that we're on the verge of potentially affirming a decision on this, I think it would be important to ask the question and see what they say, yeah.
Thanks.
Great. Any other questions? Okay. So we have a recommendation from the planning staff to recommend to council to approve the site-specific exemption. And do I have anyone that would like to put that resolution on the floor? Okay. Moved by Sin. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Paul Conley. So the resolution is on the floor. Does anyone want to speak to the resolution? Okay. Question called. All those in favor? Anybody opposed? Okay, that's unanimous. We'll move that on to council for council's decision. So thank you very much for that, folks. Okay, moving on to, oh, David gets a break. It's 20 St. Martha's Court. Brandon, this is a request to amend the current development concept plan for the subject property, which is located in the comprehensive development zone. Over to you.
Thank you. All right, so we're looking at a development concept plan amendment for 20 St. Martha's Court, PID 1154947. So some history on this lot. In November 2018, City Council passed a resolution to approve a maximum of 88 dwelling units, but split between 2 apartment dwellings on 2 different lots, Lot 2019-3 and 2019-4. For our purposes, this is only for Lot 2019-3. Again, in July of 2023, City Council passed another resolution for lots 2019-3 and 2019-3 to 43 units and 2019-4 to 45 units. So still 88, but split just differently. And subsequently, a building and development permit for lot 2019-4 was issued to construct the apartment dwelling, which is currently under construction. And here's an overhead look of the properties. The lot 3, the one we're looking at, is the one furthest away from the road. So the request here is to amend the current development agreement for lot 2019-3 specifically. The current agreement allows for 43-unit apartment dwelling, but the applicant is looking to increase that by 5 to 48 units. So between lots 2019-3 and 2019-4, this would result in 93 combined units. I think it's important to note that there's no exterior or design changes to the currently approved building. It's only the interior layout that will be changed to allow for the 48 units. And here's some elevation drawings of what the building looks like. During the public notification process, we didn't receive any comments or letters. And then again, at the public meeting, there were no comments regarding the project. So due to no design changes being required to increase the number of units in the apartment dwelling, as well as no comments being made from the public, the Planning and Heritage Department believes that this proposal is consistent with the overall development concept plan and will provide additional housing units for the residents. Therefore, staff encourages Planning Board to recommend to City Council to accept the request to amend the development concept plan and development agreement pertaining to lot 2019-3 of 20 St. Martha's Court. And thank you.
Thank you for that. So we're just moving from 43 units to 48? Okay. Any questions? Go ahead. Oh, okay. Moved by Councillor Beck, seconded by Councillor McCabe, to recommend to council to accept the request to amend the development concept plan and development agreement pertaining to lot 2019-3. Any questions on the resolution? Okay. All those in favor? Anybody opposed? Okay, unanimous. Wonderful. Okay. So these housekeeping bylaw amendments are back. Deegan is going to present this application or this file. It's a request to proceed to public consultation concerning suggested housekeeping amendments that pertain to the following sections of the zoning and development bylaw. Over to you, Deegan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So today's agenda for the report is I'll walk you through the proposed amendments to various sections of our zoning and development bylaw. We'll be discussing changes to tables, the sequence of information, alphabetical order, new additions of amendments, definitions, and revisions made to the existing definitions. So start with, we are recommending to removing and revising some sections to support STR bylaw. Section 5.9 concerning tourist accommodation as a home occupation under section 5.9.3 is being removed, and section 5.11, which is address bed and breakfast and home occupations as type of tourist accommodations under section 5.11.1 will be removed. Will also recommend eliminating section 5.11.1a, which required tourist accommodations to be single detached dwelling only. Section 5.11.2 dealing with maximum gross floor area will be replaced with regulations for tourist accommodation. Furthermore, section 5.11.4 will be replaced by section 5.11.3, removing home occupation as a type of tourist accommodation and adding the requirement to obtain a provincial license. In section 8.1, we recommended updating the zones table to include manufactured housing residential as an additional zone under the residential land use category with MHR as the corresponding symbol. Additionally, in the same zones table, we are recommending to repeal section 8.1.1 and replace it with new numbering system to align with land use zone numbering as shown on the screen. Addressing some recommended changes to usage regulation, recommendation of section 19.1.1 to replace with apartment as a permitted use, and a section 19.1.2 to be added to account for these changes. The same revision to be made in section 20.1 as well. Moreover, as depicted on the screen in section 46, we have replaced the general provisions for parking table with one what is arranged in alphabetical order by use for easier reading. In section 47.12.4, where we recommended in paragraph number 3, have replaced in accordance with 5.12.4a within accordance with 47.5.1d. Moving forward in section 47.14 and the electing signs table, in paragraph 5 of the general provisions column, we recommended to replace 5.14.4d shall not apply with 47.4.3 shall apply as highlighted. Next, we are recommending to introducing a new amendment, section 47.3 addressing prohibited signs, and adding section 47.3.1j to include signs with obscene, offensive, discriminatory, or misleading content to resolve the issue of putting a sign of public right of way. Also, section 37.1, which deals with the port zone, is recommended to be updated include section 37.1.a, events hosting, as a Port Charlottetown requested to consider hosting events as well. In Appendix A, we are recommending new definitions for authority having jurisdiction, occupancy, residential occupancy, obscene content, discriminatory content, and event hostings. And additionally, we have revised the definitions of dwelling unit, heritage inn, long-term rental, short-term rental, and tourist home to make them clearer and more supportive of the terms in the city's zoning and development bylaw. These needed changes in definition will be assist us in regulating STR bylaw. All these recommended amendments are aimed to improve the clarity and effectiveness of city's regulations. I appreciate your attention to these proposed changes, and we look forward to your feedback and input as we move forward with this update and committee's approval to take all these recommendations to the public meeting. Thank you.
So, Dagan is the Planning and Heritage Department recommends that the suggested housekeeping amendments pertaining to the following sections of the zoning and development bylaw are moved on to council for public consultation. Is that
Yeah.
what you're recommending? Okay.
I'll move that, Deputy Mayor. I think it's good to clean that stuff up.
Okay,
Can I have a question, actually?
okay. Can we put the resolution on the floor first?
Yeah, just a clarity from the
Yeah.
presenter, but yeah, sure, go ahead.
Okay, so Councilor McCabe has moved it, seconded by Bobby Kenny. Okay, questions on the floor, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So is this gone for legal review?
Yes. So in last planning board meeting in November, we were not confirmed with the legal team for some wordings, and we got the final wordings from legal team in November. We presented this again into planning and heritage committee in December. They approved it, and now the wordings are final. So we are good to go to public meeting.
So there are wordings like, discriminatory and obscene. Have you defined it anywhere in the bylaw?
It's already in the appendix.
Definition too?
Yeah.
Definition of what obscene means?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other questions? Craig, question called. All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, so this will move on to council to hopefully move on to public consultation. So thank you for that. I'll get an introduction of new business. Any new business? Oh, okay. Motion to adjourn. Moved by Lee McDonald, seconded by Councilor McCabe. All those in favor? All right. Good night, everybody.